This is the Inner Chief Podcast, episode 369.
I do believe it's really important to gather your direct team together regularly, at least every couple of weeks, and have a good conversation with them about how things are going, what support they need, and allow them to, to talk to each other, to talk to me, problem solve, and to know that they've got that support. The other thing that I think is critical is recognition, making sure you're always recognising people that are doing the right thing, who are going above and beyond, going the extra mile. It's super important as a leader that people know that you care about them and that you're engaged with them as a person, not just as someone who you're expecting results from.
G'day, this is the Inner Chief Podcast, episode 369. Our guest today is Linda Carroll, Chief People Officer at G8 Education, on driving success through the development of your people. I am your host, Greg Layton, founder of Chief Maker and the Council of Chiefs. I believe there is a great chief in all of us, and that through listening to the stories, strategies and techniques of great CEOs and gurus, each of you can find and leave your own legacy through your work and life. The Inner Chief Podcast is where you will learn how to think and make moves like a CEO, like a true chief. For over a decade, I've helped CEOs and senior executives around the world boldly lead change, inspire their people, and leave a legacy. On the Inner Chief Podcast, I bring these stories to life with deep diving CEO interviews, interspersed with minisodes covering key leadership challenges, so you will find your own path to greatness as an executive. In this episode, I chat to the remarkable Linda Carroll. As an experienced people and culture leader, Linda Carroll joined G8 Education in June 2024. With well over a decade of executive team experience in the early childhood education and care sector, Linda has honed her skills in building and managing high-performance teams across diverse networks. Her expertise lies in people and cultural transformation, talent acquisition, capability development, and employee and industrial relations. Her accolades include HR Director of the Year Award at the Australian HR Awards in 2019, and she also has an MBA in Human Resource Management from Griffith University. In today's masterclass, Linda will share the significance and power of developing your people within the organisation for continuous learning, hiring for attitude and creating a loyal culture through recognition and embracing humour, overcoming the crisis of confidence upon returning to work post-maternity leave, and the evolving role of HR and its strategic importance in driving business success via the power of our people. So Chiefs, without further ado, let's hear from the wonderful Linda Carroll. Righto, Chiefs, I'm here with the one and only Linda Carroll, Chief People Officer at G8 Education. Linda, welcome to the Inner Chief Podcast.
Thanks, Greg. Delighted to be here.
Linda, we have a wonderful tradition at the Inner Chief. We just love to know where our big chiefs come from. Can you tell a bit of a story that sums up your childhood and early life?
I can. And so I'm originally a Sydney girl. I'm from the Blue Mountains. I grew up there until I was 18. And when I was 13, I got the opportunity to move to the UK for 2 years. And that really opened my eyes to the wider world. My dad was an IBM executive back in the days when IBM was a pretty big deal. And got to see the world at a young age and have that experience of a different culture and different cities, and a long way from the sheltered life of the Blue Mountains, which was actually a great place to grow up.
Yeah, I mean, the little bubble of your local community, right? And all of a sudden you're on a big plane going to the United Kingdom. Yeah, that must have been quite the change.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it was a really pivotal point in my young life to understand how big the world was and the different types of cultures, because we got to travel from there to lots of different parts of the world. So it's certainly something that shaped me and made me more understanding of the world that we live in.
So what was your first ever paid job, Linda? Were we talking Blue Mountains or were we talking overseas?
It was actually in the Penrith Plaza. in the outer western suburbs of Sydney. And it was in a clothing store called Suzanne's, which is actually still in operation today, which is pretty
Oh,
amazing for a retailer.
yes.
And
We have their CEO or former CEO coming on the show very soon.
oh, fantastic. Yeah, so it was a great organisation. And look, I was a very shy 14-year-old, and that experience in working in retail really pushed me out of my comfort zone and taught me the importance of customer service, listening, meeting people's needs, keeping the store tidy, showing up on time. It was some great early lessons that I think anyone who's worked in a retail environment would learn along the way.
Can you remember your very first ever hourly rate?
Oh, I'm showing my age if I tell you that. It might,
Well,
it might have
I remember
been,
mine was definitely less than $5 an hour.
I was going to say it might have been around $5 an hour.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I was just under. I remember that thinking, oh,
Yeah, and I used to catch the train from the Blue Mountains down to Penrith and back after school on a Thursday and, get home at like 10 o'clock on a Thursday night. So, doing those things at that age, it built resilience and, it gave me that great sense of independence and earning your own money. So, yeah, it was good.
So what about your first ever car? This is a very important question.
Yes. So, look, there was two. I had a V-Dub Fastback that I bought that the engine blew up on the way home from buying it. So I'm not counting that because it actually was like I was totally ripped off, and it was a write-off from the get-go. My first proper car was an Alfa Romeo. It was I think it was a Boxer 4C. Again, an absolute money pit. But I thought I was very cool driving that around Sydney in the late 80s, early 90s. I'm going to say, there you go, my age of it.
So good. I can't believe
Yeah.
it went from a bomb that blew up on the drive home to then buying an Alpha, which is notorious for being even more unreliable.
Well, I just had this idea that a European car was going to be so glamorous, even though I didn't have the income to support it. Yeah.
Oh, well, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. What are you most proud of in your career?
And what I'm most proud of is the people that I've brought up with me along the way. Graduates that I've brought in who are now in heads of HR role, people that I've seen absolutely flourish, build confidence and stretch into roles and responsibilities that they may never have felt that they could get to. So seeing that development within people and within my own teams absolutely has given me the biggest kick and the biggest, I guess, satisfaction in my career.
Yeah. And I know this is something you've got a great passion for, this building the talent and the team. I mean, I think there's still, I think in many leaders' minds, a real debate about this. Like, how much do you invest in talent? Like, how many people really do get one-to-ones in a proper development plan in this day and age and in this world? Can you just sort of expand your own, I suppose, experience and philosophy on this and I suppose build the business case from your own perspective? Like, how do you sell this internally?
Yeah, so I think given that I am a chief people officer, I look after a people and culture function. I think we have to lead by example in that function in terms of the kinds of teams that we build and develop
Yeah.
and create. So absolutely, I've always felt that responsibility that you've got to show other functions within a business how it's done and how to do it well. And that's always been at the back of my mind when it comes to assembling a team. And I've always recruited for attitude rather than necessarily for skills or the ability that was right there in front of me, but looking at people's willingness, their positivity, their openness to learning and growing, and their ability to think creatively. They're all things that I rank as super important when it comes to hiring. And then from there, I really think with those attributes, you can teach people most of the skills that they'll need to be able to get ahead in the workplace. And most of those skills are transferable. So in terms of actually developing people from the ground up, bringing someone in at a graduate level or who may be still studying gives you the opportunity to shape them and to help grow them into the kind of cultural fit and into the role that is going to suit the business and the team that you're working in. And I also really think that by doing that, you're actually allowing them to show you what they can do. And to some extent, the role is shaped by that person's ability and their interests. And I think it's always good to follow that with a person if you can. So allow that role to morph into the strengths that that person displays to some extent, so that you're playing to people's strengths. You're giving them the opportunity to really shine in areas that they're interested in or they feel comfortable in. So, there have definitely been times where I've shaped a team around people's talents and abilities, as well as shaping people into roles that we needed, in functions that needed to perform.
Mm. There's a few little questions I've got here just out of that little description you've got there. One is around recruiting for attitude and creativity, and then a little bit about, I want to ask another question in a minute about when do you know when to stop developing? But because in my mind, I listen to the business case around this, and I always say, well, what if we don't do that? Like, if you don't develop your people, and if you made that a strategic decision that we're not going to do it, as opposed to, oh, maybe we'll do it later, you get the same outcome, right? And it's not wonderful. You don't develop your people. But there's a question in there that you said you recruit, sorry, a comment you made, recruit for attitude. How do you do that in an interview environment? What kind of questions do you ask?
See, I've been recruiting for so long, I don't even think about it now. But, an interview is a conversation that you have with someone where they find out as much about you and the role as you do about them. So asking the right questions, just the basic things, open questions, behavioral questions, talking through their life, through their career, similar to what you're doing now. You get a sense of someone.
Yeah.
And I think if you're good at listening and you're listening to understand, and you're paying as much attention to the non-verbal cues as what someone's telling you, that you can get a good sense of who someone is and your development process. But not just relying on that, then you want to make sure people have got the results to back it up. So you're looking at their academic transcript, or you're looking at their, what their employers have to say about them, and talking to their previous bosses. And, obviously nowadays we're relying more and more on psychometric testing and things like that. And I think all of those tools have got a place, but to some extent, you still got to rely on that gut instinct.
Yeah. We've actually covered recruitment quite a lot on the show. And one of the questions I've asked quite a lot of CEOs is, what strike rate do they think they have in hiring good versus, I don't know, a lemon, so to speak? What do you think? This is not, I won't get you to give your own strike rate, but what do you think is a good strike rate? Like, honestly, what is not a bad strike rate this time?
It's absolutely a gamble, and you never really know until the person started working with you. So I think to some extent you have to accept that you might get it wrong. And if you do, you learn from that and you move on, but you figure that out pretty quickly. So you want to make sure you're testing someone out and you're staying close to them initially during that first honeymoon period. So that you don't get down the track and they think that they're doing a great job and you're realizing they're not the right fit. So, my advice is definitely stay very close to them for the first little while once they've been hired. A good strike rate, gee, I don't know, maybe 3-1 is a good strike rate.
Pretty good, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 75%. I reckon that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I sort of felt like it'd be somewhere about 60, 70%. And I think that's a really important thing for up and coming leaders, or even current executives. Don't beat yourself up. This is a really, really hard part of business. Recruiting's so important, and yet even it looks like most of the best, like 70, 75%, they'd be pretty happy with, which means, 3 out of the 10, they're getting wrong and having to shift them, hopefully through probation, right?
Absolutely.
The other thing you mentioned in there was, it sounded to me like your philosophy was to really play almost, I'm trying the right word for it, but you are almost like a coach of a sporting team, saying, oh, maybe a bit more of that for that person. Maybe they'd be better just over here. And you're actually thinking reasonably dynamically about their current role and their current remit to give them an opportunity to grow. Is that how you think about it?
Yeah, it's tactical.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think you need to be observing how your team are operating, where they're shining, where they're struggling, where they're naturally fit, and how that team dynamic's working. And it's going to be changing all the time because we as humans are changing all the time. So you need to stay close to your team and you need to understand what's driving them and how you need to keep pivoting to get the best out of people and to get the best result.
There's a real fluidity to that kind of philosophy, which I really quite enjoy that. I think a lot of leaders will get a team in place and perhaps they just, that's my team, right? That's the role they're in, and the rigidity of that actually might, in some cases, really be holding people back. It might be good for some people, but then others, not so much.
I think if you think about our businesses that we operate and the environments that we operate in, they're changing all the time and they're changing faster than ever. So it makes sense to me that our people have got to be changing and shifting and morphing more quickly than ever and being more adaptable than ever before.
Mm. And we apply that same question for what if you don't? Like, and then you've got a very rigid team in a dynamic environment, right?
And I think, look, I think there's always going to be a place in some roles for those people who are very comfortable doing what they do and they do it extremely well.
Yes.
But I think that's becoming less and less, especially with things like AI becoming more prevalent.
Mm.
Those kinds of roles over time, may not be as important to the function of a business as they have been in the past. So the ability to keep morphing, being creative, keep changing is becoming more and more important.
Yeah. Chief, is the world just getting out of control for both you and the business? Are you finding it hard to get that laser focus you need in order to be effective? We've created a very practical resource at chiefmaker.com/focus to help you apply the right principles and moves, ask the right kinds of questions to avoid overload for you and your team and get back to core business and winning the game. Go to chiefmaker.com/focus for that PDF download. When you're going through this process of, developing and raising your people, when do you stop? Like, when do you get to a point and you say, like, what are your sort of signals that you're looking for to say, I think my little team member here has probably gone as far as I can with us. What are you looking for?
In terms of their development, I'm a big believer in continual learning and continual improvement. I don't believe it stops. It might change and it might shift, but I think as people, we've always got something to learn.
Yeah.
That's how I approach learning myself. So it might not be linear, that, it might not be that person is on an upward trajectory to get to CEO, but there might be something that they can work on still.
Yeah.
To round things out for them in their role, or to move sideways into a different, more fulfilling role. So I do believe there's always something that people naturally want to work on. And if you can tease that out of them, you're going to get that motivation and buy-in from them, and perhaps a bit more loyalty and a bit more tenure, if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. In your own development, can you look back on your career and think, hey, there was either a couple of moments that were just really important, either it was something on a course or something, a mentor, or something that went wrong, and you went, that was a moment for you that really transformed you?
I think about the leaders that I've worked for, and that's probably what's had the biggest influence on me. Yes, I've done some great formal learning and lots of internal courses and all the rest of it, but I've worked for a couple of really strong leaders who've really shaped me as a leader and who I've looked to almost in a mentoring capacity, and who've really challenged me at a time, to go beyond perhaps where I thought I could have gotten to at that point. So very early on in my career, when I'd first stepped into a team leading role, my boss at the time, who I'm still very good friends with, Swedish woman, awesome lady, she really was tough on me, and she was very disciplined, and she was very, very good at delegating. And at first, when I was much younger, I sort of thought, well, she's getting me to do everything, she's telling me I've got to do everything. But over time, I realized what she was doing. She was developing me. She was allowing me to step into that leadership space and to learn under her guidance. And not only was she doing that, but she was teaching me how to delegate really well. And she was showing me how to operate in a disciplined environment, in a good operating rhythm with consistency. And they're things that I've seen in very successful business leaders repeated over and over that they've done, just simple disciplines and operating rhythms.
Do you have any personal operating rhythm for your own self or for your team that you think, oh, this without this, our discipline and our growth and our momentum would just disappear? Is there any particular thing you go, we could not survive without this?
Yeah, probably nothing out of the ordinary, Greg, but I do believe it's really important to gather your direct team together regularly, at least every couple of weeks, and have a good conversation with them about how things are going, what support they need, and allow them to, to talk to each other, to talk to me, problem solve, and to know that they've got that support. The other thing that I think is critical is recognition, making sure you're always recognizing people that are doing the right thing, who are going above and beyond, going the extra miles. So they're two things that I find super important. I also think just basic things like a one-on-one every couple of weeks to understand what's going on with that person, not only professionally, but personally as well. So you can get a sense of where they might need a bit more support. And I think it's super important as a leader that people know that you care about them and that you're engaged with them as a person, not just as someone who you're expecting results from.
Yeah, yeah. In your career, you sound like you had some wonderful leaders along the way. What about setbacks? Did you have any setbacks that you went, oh my gosh, what have I done here? Or this is a real blow, a missed role or a stuff up?
Yeah, look, I think I'd be lying if I said no. I've had a pretty great run the last 11 years,
Yeah.
but there was a bit of a twilight zone there after I had my children. So I've got 3 boys and they're
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
they're all adults now. But stepping back into the workforce after taking that break out of the workforce to be with them, I was really surprised by how much that knocked my confidence and set me back. And I found myself almost starting again
Yeah.
and having to rebuild my career, rebuild my credibility, and, get back to sort of where I was prior to having children. So that was a tough time, but it was also really good for me because I went back and I think I did an MBA at that time, and I started to really focus on more than my family, and that was good for my family as well at that point in time, because I was kind of becoming a bit of a helicopter mum, and I think they were very pleased that I had something else to focus on other than
Yeah.
them.
Like the
So yeah, that was a tough time for me personally and professionally, but it also, I think I was a better leader when I came back into the corporate environment after having that break, because I had had the experience of becoming a parent, and that really shapes you and challenges you in lots of different ways. And it makes the corporate world look like a piece of cake.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You tend to worry about some things a bit less than, what matters most is a bit more clear to you, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. If you don't mind, I wouldn't mind just asking another question or two about that returning to work.
Mhm.
Something that's certainly come up in my work over the years, people returning back to work, and exactly as you described, the losing confidence, coming back into the office. Were there any particular tactical moves or just like you said, you did an MBA, did a few other things. Was there any particular that sort of helped? Was it like a little mantra in your head, or what did you do to rebuild that confidence?
I worked super hard, and I study on top of working full time and have my family as well. But I really doubled down for about 4 years, and I cut back. I couldn't do everything, so there were things that I cut back on my social life, and I really just focused on what I needed to do to get back to where I needed to be, or where I wanted to be. It was a tough 4 years, and I worked really hard, but I had a lot of support around me, and I think it hopefully set a good example for my children, but I did that as well. And that was what I felt like I needed to do at the time to rebuild my confidence, to prove myself again, and to set myself on the path to work towards where I wanted to get to.
Yeah, fantastic. One of the other things you've got a real passion for is, we've spoken a lot about so far about the individual development, a bit of your own journey, a bit of developing people, but what about culture more broadly? Obviously, we are people and culture, and
Yeah.
in culture, we love this. We don't need to preach to the converted here. What are There's one little question I often think about, which is what is the minimum effective dose? So if you were going into an organization and you could only make one or maximum two moves to lift culture up, what would be your first one or maximum two moves?
So what I've learned about culture, because it's a hard thing, it's intangible, isn't it? It's something that people struggle with depending on, how they look at business and how they look at their job. But the most important thing to me is something that I've already touched upon, which is recognition. So if you recognize what people do well, if you recognize when they've got a good attitude, if you recognize when they go the extra mile, if you notice when they stay back a little bit or they come up with a great idea, what you're doing is you're reinforcing those behaviours that you want them to repeat and that you want to build within that organisation. So it's something really simple, but it goes a long way because we all want that pat on the back. We all want people to notice. And I think most people come to work wanting to do a good job and wanting to get some recognition for that. But you'd be surprised how often that goes unnoticed and people don't use that opportunity and grab that to build a great culture.
Yeah, and I remember I can't remember who was responsible for the line. People don't remember what you do; they remember how you made them feel, and I think that is
Absolutely.
just such an important thing to remember uh,
Mm.
when leading a team. Yeah. What about let's focus a bit on the on building that culture just within an executive team. I mean, you've been on in exec roles for quite a considerable time now, and you've got that experience of working with senior executive groups and then with the board as well. Within building that with your peers, what's a really important part of that particular process?
So I think it comes back to trust. And that can be difficult, especially in an executive environment. Like it can get pretty tough and people have a lot of responsibility. So spending the time to build the relationships and create that trust goes a long way then to creating the right culture within a team and understanding what phase that team is in its development. Is it a new team that's just been assembled? Is it a team that have been through a lot together and are maybe a bit jaded and cynical? Are they somewhere in between? What are they facing? So really acknowledging where the team's at and what they need to do, having an understanding of the different personalities that are forming that team and how they fit together and how they can work together, and allowing that and acknowledging those differences is important. And then spending time together, both in a work environment, but also outside of a work environment, which I'm sure I'm preaching to the converted saint actually. Well, it's not a plug for what you do, but
Okay.
it makes a big difference, right? Like you would have seen
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. It
Yeah.
really does. And
And why do you think that is? Is it because it humanizes the execs and it
I think
strips everyone down to the same level?
the environment, environment dictates performance. And a few things. I think if you go into a lovely environment, maybe just outside of a city, somewhere at the beach or in the country or something like that, you see people turn up with different presence immediately. Their breathing pattern is different. They're relaxed. They're now in a new kind of emotional state, and that's the emotional state we need to do the tough work, which is strategy and culture and giving and receiving feedback to each other. If you do that in the everyday environment where people are running around, pretty fast, you don't access that particular part of the brain or that particular headspace, which is where the wisdom and the strategy and the trust can be built. So yeah, that's the I think that's the reason. There's probably scientific papers behind it, but
Mm.
you've seen it. Like people
Yeah.
walk different, and if you do, and I've done plenty of strategy sessions in the boardroom in an office, and they're okay. Like you still get work done, but it is not the same as
Mm.
when you go somewhere different.
I'd agree with that. The other thing I think that I've experienced along the way is working in an environment where an organisation is growing rapidly
Mm.
and you've got a lot coming at you. And it's a very exciting
Yeah,
phase of a
yeah,
business. And
yeah,
if you're lucky enough to be involved in a business that's in that phase, the team of people that you work with, you create a very special bond, and which is hard to break because you're going through that same experience together. You're working hard, you're usually working long hours, you're solving problems. in real time as you go and coming up with creative solutions. So it's, it can be incredibly stressful, but also deeply satisfying and a great way to bond with people. So putting people in a situation where they've got to solve a problem, which in that instance is how do we deal with this business that's growing almost faster than we can keep up with?
Yeah.
And that's an exciting place to be.
Well, I think some of the best teams I've ever worked with who are the tightest are the ones that have been through something together for, 4 to 5 years or longer.
Yeah.
They've been on this journey together, and wins, losses, setbacks, incredible victories, growth and transformation. And they've got a real energy and a power to them that is just awesome to be in the room with. Because yeah, it's right. But also what I loved about what you were saying before about the importance of bringing the team together, like one of the first things that I think is really important is that you lead situationally. So what you said before about, hey, do you know the personalities? Are you aware of the trust? Are you aware of where this team has been before? Are they new? They've been around a while. What's their transformation journey? This is important data. And if you just sort of walk into any team and lead the same way every time, it's actually likely that you're not going to get a result every time because it requires a different form of leadership. I think, like, I know in your career you've been involved in some pretty rapid growth in the like certainly in the role before you went in now, and then and even more going on now in these industries where these are people businesses. It's just so important to have that loyalty and quality people in all roles of business. What are you doing now to try and build that growth and loyalty that you think, hey, this is sort of getting to the right place. This is the kind of way we really should be doing this.
We're doing a lot of coaching, one-on-one coaching, and really that spreads across not just professional development, but I think also personal development. It's very hard to differentiate those two aspects of a person. So, they're going to bring their personal challenges and, their personal, self-limiting beliefs to the workplace. And unless they can find a way to address those, potentially it's going to hold them back, which will hold the organisation back as well. So really leaning into that space and doing more work with org psychs as well, especially in our capability area, to really unpack how the initiatives that we're looking at are likely to land, what's motivating people, what's driving people, linking things back to strategy, and then making sure that that strategy is communicated out to each level of the organisation so that they understand what we're all working toward as a group. So there's some of the things that we're doing right at this very moment to try to bring people on the journey and for them to feel as though, they're playing an important part of it, which they are, and to motivate them. I also think it's really important to keep a sense of humour with all of this stuff. It goes a long way, especially if you're in a stressful environment, and, to be able to, take the piss out of yourself and to just show people that you're human, that you make mistakes, that, it doesn't hurt to have a laugh and to enjoy the moment as well. And it doesn't have to be all serious business all the time.
It just can't be. Like,
No.
you have to have a good time. And if you look at all the most stressful environments that professionals operate in, even from the military to doctors, they actually, a lot of them have a lot of strong humor, like just to relieve the tension of these incredibly stressful environments. And if there's not, I've often said that if you're walking through the halls of a high performance team, I absolutely guarantee you'll hear laughter. And if there's not laughter, then it's not high performing.
Yeah.
It is definitely.
My CFO that I work with at the moment, he's one of the funniest people that I've ever met, and I absolutely adore working with him. And I will take any meeting that he sets up on finance and numbers, which I don't love, because it's with him and I know it's always going to be entertaining, and he's just a great human. So it just goes a long way.
I was doing a retreat just very recently, and I always create these little competitive teams where the different groups, different little mini teams in the room compete against each other. And I said to him, everyone's got 2 minutes, and in 2 minutes you've got to tell me a joke from your team. And if I don't smile, then it's negative 50 points for your team. If I get a smile, it's all right, 25 points. If you make me laugh, I'll give you 50. And it just, like, the quality of jokes, I can't repeat them on the air because
It would have been competitive as well, right?
it was competitive, and we had to say, anything can be said here. And I can't believe some of the jokes that came out. A couple of them certainly made me laugh. Uh,
Good.
just I just wanted to go back a bit because you said something really important there about developing the whole person, and so we might call that like the inner chief, so to speak, like what's going on the inside. Because well, one of our little sayings is the outer chief is simply a reflection of your inner chief. So if you're battling on the inside, most people will pick that up quite intuitively, like you'll soften it, try and hide it. But eventually people are seeing that your behavior is maybe not as good as it could be. This is interesting territory for an organization because where people bring all themselves to work every day, but how much of that are we really trying to grow? I'm interested in to know, you mentioned some of the work your org psychs are doing. Is the kind of stuff around personality modeling, understanding values to help them grow and understand their own self? Is that the kind of work you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. It's growing that self-awareness because I think the better your self-awareness is,
Yeah.
the more you've got to work with. And the better your understanding is of yourself, the more you can do to actually develop yourself and understand others. So if you're dealing with someone who's got very low self-awareness, it's very hard to do much with them. And
Yeah.
it's got to be something that comes from within.
Hmm. And I think you sort of mentioned before, in these kind of moments around personal growth, I think this is where humor is important, and acknowledging that we've all got our own little foibles and problems and issues, and having a bit of a laugh at your own personality, its own limitations, and where you get things wrong. I think that is just so important because we're all these perfectly imperfect humans. That's fantastic. Not a lot of organisations are really doing that. It's very admirable. Chiefs, more from Linda in a minute. Now, recently we continued our Best of series by featuring Nicolette Rubinstein, AM, professional board member and author. We spoke about removing guilt, female confidence, and overcoming busyness. Here's what Nicolette had to say about balancing family and career.
That means really being clear about what your goals are and what's important to you at each stage of your life. And as I said, I was very clear that particularly when my children were young, that they were my number one priority and work was my second priority. And I've got a background in strategy. So strategy at the end of the day is all about making trade-off. You have to work out, what your number one priority is and what the other priorities are, because invariably you've got limited resources and you can't do everything.
You can listen to that fantastic conversation with Nicolette by going to chiefmaker.com/367. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the podcast and check out all the other great interviews with our chiefs and gurus, as well as all the mini-sodes by going to chiefmaker.com/listen now. Righto, Chief. Let's get back to Linda Carroll of G8 Education.
Something you said earlier about that people will pick up, if your inner chief is, having a bad day or there's a problem there. And I had an experience myself personally just a couple of weeks ago. We do a quarterly listening program in my current job, and I was having a really bad day, and I'd come to work and I was pushing through like I always do, and I thought I should have stayed at home. I'm really, really struggling to, I'm not engaging very well. I'm not showing up the way that I'd like to be, but I had to present at a town hall. And I thought, well, I've got to do that. That's my job. And I did it. And then one of the comments in the listening program, and of course, I tend to just focus on the things that I can improve rather than the good things. But one of the comments was about me not being engaged, in that session. And I thought, damn, I thought I'd done a great job of hiding that and showing up as a professional. But someone picked up on that. And that was an important sort of light bulb moment for me, when I'm sort of this far through my career to sort of remind me that it's not always a great idea to push through. Sometimes you do need to just give yourself a break and regroup and then, turn up again the next day once you've done that.
Yeah, I was just chatting to someone the other day and they said some great advice they were giving when they were really heading towards burnout. Say, it's just work. It will be.
Yeah.
just it'll be here and we'll get through this. Just, the looking after yourself. And I think this is the other part of how you turn up is that are you turning up and demonstrating what that, the mindset, the emotion, the calmness, the professionalism day in, day out, which is not easy to do that every single day. And it's not possible to do it perfectly every day. So you sort of have to ride the wave of highs and lows, but just be as consistent as you can be over a long period of time. Do you do anything like, you just had a great example of how you had to somehow find something within you to do a day's work when you weren't really feeling up to it. Is there anything you say to yourself or anything you do when you're just not feeling the flow? Like, do you just park and walk away, or do you just?
Yeah, I tend to get up and move. I'll have to go for a walk and then I'll come back. So I'll just take some time out. I try to get into nature. If I'm in the city, I might walk across the road to the river, or just to get outside, 5-minute, 10-minute walk, change of environment, go back, get focused and tackle whatever it was that, I might have been putting off or that I was struggling with, or just to get myself back into the right headspace. And, definitely exercise in general is an important part of my daily routine to make sure that I'm showing up the best that I can and I'm feeling good.
What is, if you don't mind me asking, like your sort of exercise routine? Is it morning? You said morning, is it?
Depends on the day, but yeah, can be. So yeah, morning, walking the dogs, then try and get to the gym as well. And I'm lucky enough to be on the Gold Coast a lot of the time on the weekends. So I'll, ride my bike to the beach, or I'll do yoga in the park, or go kayaking, but trying to get into nature and exercise at the same time. That's what kind of fills my cup.
Yeah, that's a good recipe, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Hey, Linda, we are running towards the end of our episode. I've got a set of questions that all chiefs have to answer. Rapid fire, short kind of questions. You ready?
Ready.
Okay. If you could form the ultimate executive team of well-known leaders from any time in history, who would your top 3 picks be and what roles?
I think automatically of Barack Obama in a CEO role. So calm, so genuine, so much integrity, funny, which is super important to me. We've talked about that already. So he would definitely be on my list. I can't go past my CFO that I work with now because he's also very funny and I love working with him. So he's not a world leader, but he's someone that I really enjoy working with. I really admire Gail Kelly, the ex-CEO of Westpac, and she came up through the HR ranks. So she's someone who I think is amazing as well.
That's a pretty good team. There you go.
Yeah.
Top 3. Okay. What is the best advice a mentor has ever given you?
Just to back myself. And as a woman, you don't always do that naturally. You've got to really dig deep to do it. And sometimes that's a bit of faking it till you make it. But yeah, definitely backing myself.
Do it. Just back yourself. It's the worst that can happen. What is your number 1 interview question when looking for senior executives to join the team?
Well, senior executives like to talk about themselves. So if I'm settling into an interview, my first question is always, tell me about yourself. And that could go from 5 minutes to 20 minutes, depending on the person, but it tells me a lot about them. Absolutely. I also like to know I always like to know about their reasons for leaving jobs, because that tells me a lot about what motivates them and why they've made certain decisions. So there are a couple of questions that I would always ask. And then I usually like to throw in some situational questions just to get a sense of how they handle difficult scenarios.
So when someone's answering, tell me a bit about yourself, tell us about you, are there any things that if they talk about this or they say that, you're like, we could just call this interview over?
Oh, look, most people, by the time they get to an executive level, are pretty good with their answers. But anyone, there's nothing that comes to mind that would be a red flag. I could tell you some funny examples of interviews that I've been in. I've had executives pull out props to show me things that they've, implemented in previous roles, and they brought actually along physical artifacts to show me. And I always found that a little bit disconcerting. So yeah, I could have a whole nother podcast on
little bag of props. Here's my little show and tell. Yeah, that's an interesting ploy. Yeah, I mean, it could go either way, couldn't it? I mean, someone might appreciate that, but it's a bit.
I just found it a little odd.
Okay, what is your number 1 book recommendation?
Oh, an oldie but a goodie, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's one that I still recommend. Also, Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman's another one of my favorites.
Yeah, they're two crackers. Yeah, I think 7 Habits was the first self-help book I ever read.
I think me too.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
yes, I know.
But time management, like we haven't talked about that, but so important.
So important. Exactly. This is the problem with a podcast. There's only so many things we can talk about.
Yeah.
Can you nominate another chief you hold with great respect you think should be on a podcast?
Well, I think my CFO, because he's funny and he'd have some great stories.
I tell you what, he'd better.
And he's gotten a huge plug from me.
Yeah, that's right. Now you tell him if he'd come on the show, he's got to be funny. Otherwise, we'll put them.
I'll tell him. I'm sure he will.
I did just want to just quickly circle back on just one thing that we sort of made me think about it with your sort of last answer there. The future of HR and the people and culture function in the strategy space, like it's been through this journey of being very tactical, and where do you see the future? What's happening now? Where's the future for?
So I've been in HR for a long time, Greg, and when I started, it was very much a personnel function, which was, just covering the basic hygiene factors. And now there's still a little bit of that, but we've moved so far from that and shifted towards partnering with the business and being a trusted advisor to the CEO and to the other chiefs within the business. So it's interesting how far that's shifted as people have started to realize the value of human capital. And I think that's only going to continue to head that way in the future. So what we're really doing now is we're looking at a whole of workforce capability. We're looking at whole of workforce performance. We're looking at accountability. We're looking at health and safety. We're looking at, best in class talent acquisition. So it's a massive amount of work that straddles across the whole employee life cycle, and each of those touch points across that employee life cycle have got to be meaningful and are an opportunity to engage with people. So that's the task that we're faced with as a function of the business, and it really is something that involves everyone in the business, but we're leading the way from a people and culture perspective, and we're coaching and taking other leaders on that journey, because with all due respect to my IT and finance colleagues, it might not be their sweet spot and they're a little bit lost and out of depth, as are some of my legal and compliance colleagues. So everyone brings strengths into an organisation and into a team, but building up their ability and their confidence to deal with their people in a meaningful way, making sure that their people are held accountable, but also coached and developed. There's quite an art to doing that well and keeping those people engaged, and that's where I see the people and culture function sitting and strengthening in the future.
Yeah, great. Okay, final 2 questions, Linda. If you could lead any company in the world, what would it be?
I think it'd have to be something like in fashion, like Louis Vuitton, or I don't know, some kind of luxury high-end goods.
Pretty cool.
Or maybe that's a bit shallow when I should go for something a little bit more philanthropic. I'm kind of torn. I mean, I'm in a for-purpose sector at the moment, and there's a lot of regulation. There's a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of good things that come out of that. So I think some kind of escapism would be nice, like something more artistic, like film or television or fashion. It's just something a bit fun. Yeah.
Okay, what is a final message of wisdom and hope?
Look after your people, take care of them, grow them, and you'll get a great return on that investment.
Awesome. Thank you, Linda. Wonderful to have you on the show.
Thanks, Greg. Great to chat.
Chief, that sums it up for this week and our wonderful chat with Linda Carroll. Now, don't forget, Linda is a seasoned pro who's been really in these high-level strategic roles in difficult industries like early childhood for a long time now. These are rapidly growing and changing industries under an enormous amount of compliance and change, and her role at the top leading people has just been critical to their success. So I thank Linda for her time, her energy, her generosity, and the message she continues to deliver about finding power in the people that work for you. All the links and resources can be found at chiefmaker.com/369. And if you would like to stay in touch and hear all about some of the best resources that you can find anywhere in the world to improve your performance at work, go to chiefmaker.com/subscribe. Now, Chief, if you're yet to rate the episode and subscribe, I hope you'll do so soon. It helps others see the magnificent value that the chiefs and gurus bring to their life and career. So make sure you hit subscribe on your podcast app now, give it a 5-star rating if you think it's worthy, and leave a short review about your favourite episode. Righto, Chiefs, as always, remember to stay epic.